The music from the ranch house spilled into the warm night air, fiddles and boots pounding in steady rhythm. Lanterns hung from fence posts, swaying gently as couples laughed and twirled across the packed dirt yard. It was the kind of night meant for easy smiles and harmless flirtation. Caleb Mercer stood apart from it all. He leaned against the outer wall of the barn, arms folded, hat pulled low. Even in shadow, he was impossible to miss. Broad shoulders strained against his dark shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms built from years of hauling, roping, lifting. Most men on the ranch were strong. Caleb was something else entirely, solid as carved stone, taller than most doorframes, carrying his strength like a weapon he kept carefully sheathed. He didn't dance, didn't drink much either. He watched. Emma Callahan noticed him long before she meant to. She had been pulled into 2 dances already by well-meaning ranch hands, their palms sweaty and eager. They were kind enough boys, but predictable. Safe in a way that felt rehearsed. Every laugh sounded the same. Every compliment landed too quickly. But Caleb never looked at her like that. When their eyes met across the yard, his gaze didn't travel down her dress. It didn't linger in places meant to make her uncomfortable. It held steady, direct, assessing, almost cautious. As if she were the dangerous one. She excused herself from the next dance and slipped away from the lantern light, boots crunching softly across gravel as she approached the barn. "You avoiding the party?" she asked, stopping a few feet from him. His jaw shifted slightly before he answered. "Not much for crowds." "That's so." She folded her arms loosely, mirroring his stance without realizing it. "Or not much for dancing." A corner of his mouth twitched. "Don't see much point in stepping on someone's toes." The fiddle music swelled behind them, followed by a burst of laughter. Emma tilted her head. "You could ask me." His expression hardened, not unkindly, but with something like warning. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" He straightened from the wall slowly, unfolding his arms. The movement alone shifted the air between them. Up close, he was even larger than he appeared from a distance. Taller by more than a head, wider through the shoulders than the barn door frame behind him. "I'm too big for you," he said quietly. It wasn't arrogance, it was caution. Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks, but not from embarrassment. From irritation. "Too big," she repeated. "You're light as a breeze," he continued. "I've seen what happens when I don't measure my strength. I don't need to be the reason someone gets hurt." The words weren't boastful, they were burdened. She studied him more carefully then. The slight stiffness in the way he held himself. The deliberate space he kept between them. The restraint. "You think I'd break?" she asked. "I think I don't want to test it." For a moment, the music behind them faded into background noise. The night seemed to narrow until it was just the two of them in the space he insisted on guarding. Emma stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "I'm not made of glass, Caleb." His breath shifted, shallow but controlled. "You don't know what you're asking," he said. Her chin lifted slightly, steady and unafraid. "Then maybe," she replied softly, "you should stop deciding for me." The loft was warmer than the night outside, the air thick with the scent of hay and sun-dried wood. Moonlight filtered through the high barn windows in pale silver beams, striping the floor and catching in the dust that drifted lazily between them. Below, the muffled thud of music and distant laughter from the ranch house felt far away, like another world. Entirely. Caleb climbed the ladder first, more out of habit than assumption, then immediately stepped aside at the top, giving Emma room to rise without brushing against him. Even in tight quarters, he was careful. Deliberate. Every movement measured. She noticed. He kept his distance near a stack of hay bales, broad frame half lit by moonlight, half shadowed. Up here, the size difference between them felt more pronounced. The ceiling beams seemed lower because he stood beneath them. The space felt smaller because he filled so much of it. "You don't have to prove anything," he said again, voice lower now, steadier but threaded with restraint. "Not to me." Emma closed the last few feet between them slowly, boots whispering across the wooden planks. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the weight of choice. No one had followed them. No one had pushed her here. This moment was hers. "I'm not proving," she replied. "I'm choosing." His jaw flexed at that. She stopped just in front of him. Close enough to feel warmth radiating through the thin fabric of his shirt. Close enough to see the tension held tight in his shoulders, like a horse waiting for a command not to run. He smelled like leather and clean sweat and night air. "You keep warning me," she said softly. "Like I don't understand what you are." "And what am I?" he asked. "Strong," She answered without hesitation. Careful. Afraid of hurting something you don't want to. That landed. His eyes darkened slightly, not with anger, but with something deeper. Exposure. Emma lifted her hands slowly and placed them against his chest. The contact was intentional, warm, steady. His muscles tightened beneath her palms, not in aggression, but in reaction. He didn't grab her wrists. Didn't move her away. He simply held still. You feel that? She asked quietly. My heart, he murmured. It's racing. So's yours. She smiled faintly. Good. Before he could respond, she pressed forward gently. Not enough to shove, but enough to shift his balance. He took one step back, then another, until the back of his legs met a low bale of hay. The surprise in his expression almost made her laugh. Emma, he said when she pushed again, more startled than forced. The shift changed everything. For the first time, she was the one looking down at him. She stepped between his knees slowly, watching his face for hesitation. There was none, only restraint, tight, vibrating restraint. Then, with deliberate boldness, she settled onto his lap. His breath left him in a controlled exhale. His large hands lifted instinctively, but hovered inches from her waist, waiting for direction. Tell me to stop, she whispered. His voice came rougher now. I won't. Her fingers slid lightly into his hair, testing the boundary. You keep saying you're too big for me, she murmured, leaning closer, lips near his ear. But you're the one sitting. The smallest huff of laughter escaped him, half disbelief, half surrender. You don't know what that does to a man, he said. Her lips brushed just beneath his ear, warm and daring. Then, she breathed, try me tonight. For a suspended second, the world narrowed to breath and heartbeat. Emma could feel the tension coiled inside Caleb, not wild, not uncontrolled, but tightly leashed. His hands remained at her waist, large enough to span it easily, yet he held her as though she were something rare and breakable. You're sure? He asked again, voice low, roughened by restraint rather than hunger. She didn't look away. I don't want you careful because you're afraid, she said softly. I want you careful because you care. Something shifted in his expression then. The warning he'd been carrying all night eased into something steadier. Not dominance, not surrender, trust. His thumbs brushed lightly against her sides, testing, giving her time to flinch or pull back. She didn't. Instead, she leaned in and kissed him first. It wasn't timid. It wasn't reckless either. It was certain. For a heartbeat he stayed still, absorbing the feel of her mouth against his. Then he answered her, slowly at first, matching her pace, letting her set the rhythm. His hands slid upward along her back, firm but measured, fingers spreading wide as though memorizing the shape of her. The kiss deepened gradually, heat building without rush. There was strength in him, undeniable, powerful, but it moved with intention. Every shift of his hands paused just long enough for her to object. She never did. When she pressed closer, he exhaled softly against her lips, the last thread of restraint loosening. Emma, he murmured, voice thick with feeling, you don't have to prove you can handle me. I'm not handling you, she whispered back. I'm choosing you. The words seemed to steady him more than anything else. He rose carefully to his feet, lifting her with effortless strength, but his eyes never left hers, searching for the smallest hint of uncertainty. Her arms slid around his shoulders willingly, legs wrapping around his waist in silent answer. The movement wasn't about power. It was about balance. He carried her a few steps across the loft, setting her down gently against a stack of hay bales softened by old quilts. Even then, he didn't crowd her. He leaned over her slowly, bracing his weight on his arms so she never felt pinned. You tell me if it's too much, he said quietly. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. It won't be. His kiss turned deeper then, still unhurried, but no longer cautious to the point of distance. His strength showed in the way he held her securely, the way his hands spanned her waist and hips, anchoring rather than overwhelming. She felt powerful in that moment, not because she controlled him, but because he trusted her enough to let go. The barn loft seemed to pulse with warmth despite the cool night outside. Moonlight slid across his shoulders, outlining the breadth of him against the pale boards. She could feel the steady rhythm of his heart beneath her palm, strong, certain. I was never afraid of you, she whispered. He brushed his lips along her temple, slower now, reverent. I was afraid of myself. She shook her head gently. You don't scare me. His forehead rested against hers, breath mingling. The intensity between them no longer felt like a warning. It felt like harmony, strength meeting boldness, caution meeting courage. And as his hands moved with confident tenderness instead of hesitation, Emma realized something simple and steady. He had never been too big for her. He had just been waiting for someone brave enough to step forward and stay.